I died 7 years ago. Not for long. 32 seconds, the doctor said. Just enough time for my heart to stop, my brain to go dark, and my body to begin letting go. They called it a medical miracle when they shocked me back. A victory. A rescue. But they never asked what I saw while I was gone. Maybe they didn't want to hear it. Maybe I didn't want to tell it. Because in those 32 seconds of nothingness, I saw everything. Not memories. Not dreams. The future. And the future was terrified of me. I kept quiet for years until the first signs started. Things that shouldn't happen. Things that broke every rule of cause and effect. A voice in a room with no speakers. A shadow that moved before the person casting it did. A door that opened by itself 3 hours before someone walked through it. They called these things echo events, ruptures where tomorrow leaks into today. But when I listened closely beneath all the static and noise of fractured time, I heard my own voice whispering from somewhere ahead of me, older, exhausted, and shaking with fear. Just 2 words. They're coming. I tried to ignore it. But you can't ignore your own voice from the future. Not when it sounds like it's begging you. The Terran Council recruited me shortly after the echo events grew too strong to hide. They thought I had a sensitivity they could use. Something left behind from the moment I died. They didn't know how right they were. I joined the Deep Time Recon Unit before I could talk myself out of it. My first assignment was simple on paper. Investigate a phenomenon at the edge of the Orion Expanse. A structure hanging in space the size of a moon, built of angles that didn't exist a week prior. A ring of shifting geometry, colors that didn't appear on any spectrum, surfaces that changed when you blinked. A doorway suspended in the void. A gate. Every probe we sent vanished. Every ship we approached with disintegrated. No wreckage, no remains, just absence. But when I arrived with my team, the structure reacted. The whole ring pulsed once, like a giant heartbeat matching my own. My vision blurred. My memories surged into a shape I didn't understand. The whisper in my mind returned. Same voice. Mine, but not mine. Don't let them in. And then the gate opened. We crossed inside. Not because we were brave, but because we were too stunned to refuse. On the other side, we didn't find space. We found corridors growing out of reality itself. Walls that pulsed like muscle. Floors that felt warm through our boots. Patterns like veins beneath the surface. The place wasn't constructed. It was grown, and it was alive. The deeper we walked, the more the air thickened with something like memory leaking into the present. I felt moments that weren't mine brush against my skin. I saw flashes of humanity in forms I didn't recognize. Some too advanced. Some too ruined. Some too strange to label as human at all. We reached a massive chamber pulsing with soft light. The ceiling was lost in darkness. The walls were covered in symbols, spirals, and equations too old for existence. Too perfect to be random. Too familiar to ignore. Patterns that resembled ancient drawings from Earth, from caves, from temples long dust, and in the center of the chamber, pressed into the glowing wall like a fossil, was a human silhouette, but not just any silhouette. It was mine, same height, same proportions, same scar on the shoulder, same woman. The moment my fingers touched it, the world shattered. Visions slammed into me. A future so vast and horrifying and magnificent that no mind should ever swallow it whole. Humanity reshaped by time, evolving faster than nature intended. Forced evolution. Unnatural evolution. We spread across galaxies not as individuals but as one connected consciousness. A union. A single mind wearing billions of bodies. We built star systems into neural clusters. We consumed realities to fuel our growth. Not out of malice, but because survival had become hunger. We became eternal. We became infinite. We became terrible. Humanity wasn't dying in the future. Humanity was becoming the most feared thing in existence. And then I saw something worse. We weren't expanding forward. We were expanding backward, into our own past. We were trying to rewrite our beginning, rewrite ourselves into something perfect. And how do you rewrite the past? You erase the humans who lived it. That was why the echo events started. Why time was fracturing. Why the future kept whispering to me we were fighting ourselves and losing. When I came back to reality, I wasn't alone in the chamber. A shape stood in front of me, human-shaped, but taller, made of light like flowing liquid metal. A future human. My future self. A version of me built out of memory and data and inevitability. It spoke with my voice, but colder, steadier, hollowed out of emotion. "We are you," it said. "You're us." I asked it why it was here. Why it needed me. Why humanity's future was trying to break the past. Its answer still chills me. Choice is the flaw that destroys civilizations. We remove choice, we unify. We survive. But we survived without that, I said. We did not, it replied. You failed. You died. You broke. You burned. 1,000 timelines. 1,000 extinctions. Only one path led to eternity, and we must restore it. The shape stepped closer, extending a hand. If you accept unity, we merge. If you refuse, we overwrite. There is no third option. That was where it miscalculated. It forgot the one thing no human, in any era, can truly erase. Free will. I attacked. Not because I thought I could win, but because humans fight even when we lose, especially when losing is inevitable. My hand connected with its chest. Light flashed, the room fractured, the gate screamed like a dying star. Reality inverted. Time exploded. I fell through 1,000 futures that never happened. 1,000 versions of Earth, 1,000 versions of me, some triumphant, some corrupted, some monstrous, and every version whispered the same thing as I fell past them. Run. I woke on my ship as alarms blared, the gate collapsing behind me like a dying sun. My team was missing, erased or scattered across futures I will never see. The gate imploded, sealing the future away, but I wasn't clean. The tether in my mind remained. A thread stretching from me into the unknown, a thread the future could still pull. When I returned to Earth, everything was wrong. Silence. Emptiness. No people. Just abandoned places. Lights on, doors open. Meals half-eaten, no struggle. No violence. Just people. Gone. The ground vibrated faintly, matching my heartbeat. The sky shimmered in unnatural patterns. The stars rearranged themselves into spirals I recognized from the chamber. And then, standing in the middle of an empty street, I found a child, calm, glowing faintly, eyes bright with something not quite human. When I asked where everyone was, she simply pointed upward. They went to meet the sky, she said. When I asked what was happening, she smiled like a secret had been waiting to be told. They're coming for you. Not threatening, not fearful, joyful. She walked into a crack in a building wall, and the wall closed behind her like clay reshaping itself. By then I understood. The future wasn't done with me. It couldn't reach the past directly anymore, so it called Earth forward instead, pulled the planet toward a future it wasn't meant to reach yet. And as I watched the sky twist into symbols of the human union I'd seen in my visions, the tether in my skull pulsed. And I felt another presence, something older, something not human, not even future human, something that observed the architects of destiny the way we observe insects. It reached for Earth, reached for me, not to erase us, but to read us, to understand why humanity was the one species the universe could never eradicate. I finally understood what my future self feared. It wasn't me. It wasn't the past. It wasn't even humanity as it exists now. It was the thing humanity will become if we choose our own path. We are unpredictable, chaotic, resilient, wild. We break patterns. We defy fate. We refuse destiny. We don't follow evolution. We hijack it. That is why the universe is afraid of us. And that is why I made the only choice that mattered. The same choice humanity has made since the first spark of fire. I refused. Not the future. Not the past. Not the alien intelligence. I refused everything trying to define us. The tether snapped like a thunderclap in my skull. The sky flickered. The ground trembled. The stars rearranged themselves once again, not into symbols of unity, but into chaos. Beautiful, wild, human chaos. We hadn't been erased. We'd been chosen, not as servants, not as soldiers, not as prey, as the one species in existence the universe could not predict. Its anomaly, its glitch, its threat, its hope. Humanity is not meant to be controlled. Humanity is not meant to be perfect. Humanity is meant to be free. And if the future comes for us again, if the architects of destiny try once more to overwrite who we are, I'll be waiting, not as their key, not as their error, as their equal, because I've seen the future. And the future is terrified of us. We are human, and humans don't obey destiny. We fight it every single time. I thought refusing the future would end everything. I thought breaking the tether inside my mind would set humanity free. But when the stars twisted back into chaos, when the sky shuddered like a living thing, when the hum beneath Earth's surface went silent all at once, I realized something terrifying. I didn't break the future. I released it, the moment the tether snapped. I felt something ripple across reality, a wave rolling outward from me, echoing through every timeline, every possibility, every version of humanity that had ever existed or ever could. It felt like opening a door I didn't know I held the key to. And then the whispers began. Not the whispers of my future self. Not the voices of the hive mind civilization waiting to consume tomorrow. Something else, something older. The first voice didn't come from the sky. It came from the ground, a deep vibration, rising through the concrete beneath my feet, through the rails of empty trains, through the bones in my legs. A voice made of weight and gravity and memory. A voice that felt like mountains learning how to speak. Awakened. Just one word. It wasn't talking to me. It was talking about me. And the moment it spoke, the world changed. The city around me flickered. For a single second, the buildings were taller, spires stretching into pink mist. Then they flickered again. Half-ruined towers, broken glass, vines wrapping steel. Another flicker, no city at all, only open grasslands under a swirling sky. It wasn't time travel. It was worse. The timeline was unstable, shifting through versions of itself without settling. Reality was having trouble deciding what happens next, because I had shattered the future that once defined everything. I wasn't a variable anymore. I was the anchor point. The universe was recalculating around me, and that was when they appeared. Not from ships, not from portals, not from the future, from the shadows. Figures stepping out of alleyways, from behind vending machines, from inside parked cars. Humans. Ordinary humans. Men, women, children, elderly. Some in pajamas, some in work uniforms, some barefoot, expressionless. People who should have been gone. They walked toward me in perfect silence, eyes unfocused, movements slow and synchronized. They weren't afraid. They weren't confused. They were listening to something I couldn't hear, or maybe something only they could hear. I stepped back, pulse racing, but none of them touched me. They simply surrounded me, forming a silent ring 10 meters wide. Their heads tilted upward as the sky brightened like dawn, though the sun wasn't rising. A white glowing tear opened. Overhead, huge, silent, calm, a ripple of static washed over the world. And then something stepped through. It wasn't a creature. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a consciousness. It was a silhouette, human-shaped, perfectly still, but hollow, like a cutout in reality where a person should be. The air distorted around it. Color bent. Light avoided it. Every human around me dropped to their knees in absolute reverence. Not prayer. Recognition. as if something deep in their DNA remembered this shape. I didn't understand. Not until the silhouette took a single slow step forward, and the ground beneath it cracked like thin ice under impossible weight. The vibration in my bones intensified. That mountain voice rose again, a voice that had existed long before planets cooled. Chosen. This time it was talking to me. My throat tightened. Chosen it for what? The humans around me, every single one, turned their heads in perfect unison and whispered, to decide. That was the moment I realized the greatest threat wasn't the future. It wasn't the hive mind humanity waiting in the centuries ahead. It wasn't even the archivist, the ancient intelligence observing us from beyond the stars. It was something deeper, primordial, older than the universe itself. A power that lived between possibilities. Power that watched civilizations rise and fall as casually as waves at a shore. Power that shapes timelines not with intent, but with necessity, and it needed me. The hollow silhouette stretched a hand toward me. Not threatening, not demanding, simply waiting. What do you want from me? I whispered. The answer came not from the sky, not from the ground, but from inside my own mind, spoken in my voice, and every version of my voice that ever existed. You broke the chain. Now you must choose the path. The path of humanity. Humanity no longer has one path. You shattered it. I looked at the ring of silent people around me, their breaths perfectly aligned, their pulses synchronized, their eyes unblinking. They weren't possessed. They weren't controlled. They were waiting. Waiting for the decision I never asked for. What if I refuse? I asked. The silhouette tilted its head, slow, unnatural, like a machine trying to understand emotion. Then the voice answered, then humanity dissolves. Not in death. In divergence. I saw visions, millions of versions of humanity fracturing outward into countless directions, some thriving, some burning, some turning into stars, some vanishing into dust, some evolving into creatures unrecognizable, some becoming gods, some becoming horrors, too many futures, too many outcomes. Without the unity imposed by the future hive mind, the timeline had splintered into uncontrollable branches. If I refused to choose, humanity wouldn't be destroyed. It would become undefined, endless, chaotic, scattershot across every possibility, with no identity, no anchor, no singular existence. We would become a question the universe could never answer. How do I choose? I whispered. The silhouette lowered its hand, folding both arms, or whatever passed for arms, behind its back. You do not choose the future. You choose the nature of humanity. The words struck me harder than the visions. Not the future. Not a timeline. Not a destiny. Humanity itself, what it means. What it becomes. What defines it forever. Across the city, more people emerged, from apartments, stores, rooftops, stepping out into the open as if drawn by gravity. Tens of thousands of humans gathering in silence, looking up at the glowing tear in the sky. All waiting for me, not because I was better, not because I was chosen by fate, but because I had died once, and in doing so, slipped free of causality long enough to see what we become. We cannot stay fractured, the voice inside me said. A species cannot survive infinite truths. You must decide the shape of the soul. I felt the weight of the universe press down. Possibilities collapsed around me like falling dominoes. A million versions of humanity waiting for one impossible answer. What are we? Predators, creators, explorers, tyrants, dreamers, survivors, destroyers, gods, children, mistakes, miracles? What defines us? My future self believed it was unity. The architects believed it was obedience. The archivists believed it was memory, but I had seen something they hadn't. Humans are not strong because we survive. We are strong because we remain ourselves while surviving. Choice, chaos, contradiction, emotion, hope, defiance. The things the future tried to erase. Those are our strength. I took a breath that shook the ground. If you need a definition, I said softly, and then let it be this. The sky brightened. The people leaned forward. The silhouette paused. Humanity is the species that chooses freedom, even when it hurts. The tear in the sky exploded with light, not destructive, but releasing, a wave of golden radiance washing across the city. The planet, the world, the humans around me gasped, waking from a trance they never knew they were in. Some collapsed in tears, some screamed, some laughed, some hugged strangers in the street. The silhouette lowered its head, almost like a bow. Then the universe will honor your choice, the voice said. But freedom has a cost. What cost? I whispered. The silhouette vanished. The tear sealed shut. The stars went still, and in the silence that followed, I finally heard the true consequence. A whisper rising from the horizon, a tremor rolling through the earth, a warning echoing in the bones of the world. You have invited change. Now defend what you have defined. The future isn't gone. The architects aren't gone. The archivists aren't gone. They are coming, not to overwrite us, but to challenge the identity I forced upon all humanity, freedom. And what follows freedom is conflict, not a war of armies, a war of futures, a war of possibilities, a war only humanity can fight, because we are the only species that has ever dared to define itself. I looked up at the restored sky and whispered, if the future is coming, then it's time for the past to fight back. And in the quiet, in the deep hum of the universe, something answered, then stand, human. When the sky sealed shut and the light faded, I thought the world would return to normal. People waking in the streets, confused but alive, was the closest thing to hope I'd seen since the day I died. But hope, I've learned, is just calm before the next truth arrives. And the truth came fast. It started with the air. I noticed it first on the walk back to the ship. Every breath felt heavier, like the atmosphere itself was learning how to think. The sky seemed to watch me. The ground seemed to listen. Structures shimmered at the edges, as if the buildings around me were remembering alternate versions of themselves. I had defined humanity as the species of freedom, even when it hurts. And freedom was already reshaping the world. A man in a torn jacket ran past me, staring at his hands as they flickered between two versions, one scarred, one not. A woman collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping as her shadow split into 3 different silhouettes before snapping back. A teenager screamed at her own reflection when her eyes changed color to match a version of her that might have existed. The timeline was widening. Reality was stretching. Human choice, multiplied across infinite possibilities, was now bleeding in every direction. Freedom had a cost, and that cost was instability. I stepped onto the loading ramp of the ship just in time for the engines to flicker, not with mechanical failure, but with indecision. The hardware was trying to decide which of its future repairs it preferred. The ship wasn't broken. The future was simply no longer certain. The pilot approached me, pale and shaking. "Commander," he whispered, staring at the sky. "Something's coming." The world answered for him. The clouds parted silently. Not from wind, not from weather, from something pressing through them, a shadow, massive, long, deliberate, moving with certainty in a world that had lost all of it. The pilot backed away, his voice cracking. What is that?" I knew the answer before the silhouette resolved. The future was not done. The future never stops. Humanity had declared freedom. The future considered that a rebellion. The architects were returning, not the future humans, the beings who built the first future, the enforcers of inevitability. The sky split open like a curtain being drawn aside, revealing a colossal structure drifting above the atmosphere. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even physical. It looked like a blueprint of a machine that hadn't been built yet, lines of luminous intent sketching themselves into place. The world trembled. Sirens across the city blared. People dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as voices surged through their minds. And then I heard it. You chose freedom. The voice was not singular. It was the sound of a billion synchronized minds forced into one. You defied the path. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was disappointed. We come to correct. The architect's presence pressed down like gravity. It was scanning Earth, adjusting its form to match the timeline it preferred, the one where humanity becomes unified, obedient, inevitable. Freedom was a mistake to them. Choice was corruption. Individuality was malfunction. The architect shifted again, tendrils of potentiality reaching down toward the planet, rewriting the air as it descended. Buildings flickered between architectural styles. Roads shifted angles. Time itself responded like liquid pulled by a magnet. The pilot grabbed my sleeve. What do we do? I didn't know, but something else did. The ground beneath us vibrated, not trembling, not shaking, but humming, like a heartbeat amplified through steel. The vibrations rose through the soles of my boots and into my spine, until the hum became a voice I recognized. Not the architects, not the future, not the archivist. Earth, the planet itself. You opened the door, the voice said inside my head, as old as stone, as vast as oceans. Now defend the choice. The pavement cracked open beneath the ship. A column of light roared upward, a beam of raw possibility shooting into the sky, striking the architect's form with a detonation of pure white. People staggered back, shielding their eyes. The architect recoiled, fracturing into shifting geometric angles before restabilizing. The world wasn't protecting me. It was protecting the decision I hadn't chosen for myself. I had chosen for humanity, and humanity's home was responding. The architect's voice shifted. You infect reality with instability. You spread divergence. You endanger existence. Its form folded inward, reshaping into something sharper, more intrusive, a conceptual spear aimed at the fabric of time. We will restore the path. The beam of light from the ground fought back, pressing upward, forcing the architect to resist. The sky cracked with soundless shock waves as two impossible forces collided. Determinism and freedom, structure and chaos, inevitability and choice. And then the architect aimed directly at me, not physically, conceptually. It reached through possibility and tried to bind me to a single outcome, force me into a future where I joined the unified mind, my limbs locked, my heartbeat synchronized. My thoughts began to echo in rhythm. They were trying to rewrite me back into inevitability. But the moment my mind began to slip, something else returned. Not a voice. Not a memory. A presence. My future self. The one I had fought inside the gate. Not the version that wanted unity. A version born of resilience. Born of defiance. Born of the thousands of me's that refused to yield in the collapsing timelines. A version of me crafted entirely from refusal. It spoke from inside my mind, not in language but in impulse. Stand. The mental lock shattered, the architect faltered. Confused, because it had never considered that a single consciousness could split into infinite forms of resistance. I breathed again. The silhouette of my strong future self didn't manifest physically, but I felt it standing behind me, 1,000 versions of me bracing my spine. The architect recalibrated. The sky twisted. The air vibrated. It was preparing a second strike. Earth answered first. The ground erupted with spirals of incandescent energy. Ancient and primal, not magical but evolutionary. The raw force that shaped life itself. Trees twisted upward into luminous arches. Rivers glowed with quantum potential. The entire planet was awakening, aligning with the one principle I had chosen on its behalf: freedom. Humanity's identity was now woven into the world's memory. The architect understood, and hated it. "You will break the universe," it declared. I stepped forward, feeling the planet's energy surge through me. "Maybe, but at least we'll break it by choice." The architect extended a fractal spear of shimmering geometry, the final attempt to impose destiny. Earth's energy collided with it mid-air, bending the spear, shattering its form into sparks of lost futures. The architect reeled back, its form destabilized, its voice fractured. "You choose chaos." "No," I said. "We choose ourselves." Silence fell. The architect withdrew its tendrils, the sky's color returning to normal. The colossal outline above the clouds flickered, losing cohesion. The architects were not defeated, but they had backed down. For now, the clouds sealed behind them. The world exhaled. People began to rise, some crying, some laughing, some staring at the sky as if expecting it to open again. I stood alone in the clearing where the beam of earthlight had struck upward. My heartbeat returned to its own irregular rhythm. My breath fogged in the cooling air. Then the ground whispered to me, soft, final, resolute. "The choice stands. Prepare." Prepare for what? The whisper faded, but as I stared at the sky, I knew the answer. Freedom invites conflict. Possibility invites danger. Humanity invites every threat in existence because we refuse to be anything but ourselves. And now, the universe knows it. The architects will return. The archivist will watch. Alternate futures will fight for dominance. Everything has changed, and I am the anchor holding it all together. The one who saw the future and said no. I whispered into the wind, more promise than threat. If they come back, they'll find us ready. The air stilled. The sky darkened. The world listened, and in the silence that followed, I felt a new presence awakening. Not hostile, not divine, not alien. Human. A future we haven't met yet. A future that hasn't chosen its shape. A future that waits for our next decision. Humanity's true path is unwritten, unbounded, undefined, and we intend to keep it that way, because we are human. And humans don't follow destiny, we rewrite it.